Hey, Gathering family, if I had to sum up yesterday's service in one word, wow, mind blowing, powerful. Maybe there's not one word. It was just such a great service. What a way to kick off the new year. I felt like all of us showed up with this level of expectation. Like, I'm so glad 2024 is over, and I'm so excited about what could happen in 2025. Just thank you for the way you worship, the way that you were sensitive to the Holy Spirit. Just so many evidences yesterday of His faithfulness. Just loved it from start to finish. And so I'm thinking about the message, right? Because we're kicking off this series called Tipping the King, and it's a simple analogy. We're talking about how we typically tip at the end of a meal for the service that we got. And I just shared the quick story yesterday about the man who ran the social experiment for a year just to see what would happen if he tipped on the front end of the meal, basically told the server, you're going to get 10% no matter how bad or good it is. But if it's exceptional, man, you're going to get a lot more. And we talked through how he found out that by setting the expectation, by taking that, let's just call it a step of faith, placing that trust in the server and honoring that server, what he found was more times than not, he got much better service than he would have previously. So we talked about honoring the king instead of tipping the king, putting Jesus first. He is the priority. And what I wish I'd have said, maybe, and I'll say this as we go through the rest of the weeks, I'd just like to help each one of us kind of step back, think about practically how do you do that, right? And I want to leave you with a verse. I'm going to read 3 verses in Hebrews chapter 12, and then I want to leave you with a word in the last verse that you can marinate on, think about this week as you consider in your life, what does it look like to put Jesus first, to make him not a priority or even the most important of all my priorities, but to make him the priority, to put him first, to let the rock go first and then let everything else find its place. So Hebrews chapter 12 says this, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Here's verse 3, the one that I want you to remember. Consider him, Jesus, who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. That word for consider is the only time that it's used in the New Testament, and it means to ponder, to think about, and there's even a weightiness to it, like to weigh options against one another. So the author is basically telling us, like, when you start to get tired, when you start to feel weary, when you start to wonder, is this worth it? Is Jesus worth being my priority? He says, when you start to feel that way, consider, think about, ponder what he endured for you. And man, when I think about what Jesus endured for me, the opposition that he went through, the scorning that he experienced, the whips, the crown of thorns, all the things, right? When I consider that, what in my life compares to that? Nothing, right? And it's not that God's trying to invalidate our experiences. He's not. He's just saying, like, examine your experience in light of what Jesus endured to bring you back home to him. And so this week, as you're considering, what does it look like to honor the king instead of tipping the king? What does it look like to put him first? Remember, put the rock, Jesus, in the jar of my life first, and then let everything else find its place. As you're doing that, maybe get out a piece of paper, open up your notes app on your phone, and just begin to list, consider, think about all the ways that the Lord has blessed you, has taken care of you, has met you in your darkest hour. Begin to list those things. And when you start to think, is this even worth it? Maybe I want to give up, or maybe I just blew it. I just sinned in a major way, and I can't imagine that God could still love me. Read that list again and consider him who endured such opposition so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. I pray you have a great week and come back next Sunday with even more anticipation about what God's going to do as we gather together corporately. Have a great week.